Thanks you, everyone, for joining us on Inconvenient Times for your Friday around the world. Alex makes me feel really bad with all the lights up.
Just some mountains to the west, so it's getting dark early. It's 6 p.m. only.
I see.
Okay.
So we did have two agenda changes. Matt Davis was supposed to give a quick demo on delivery assurance just to get the committee familiar with where we're going to sit amongst that function. We're postponing that to next week. And Adam Dean from the community was going to go over his proposal for our election cycle, and we're moving that to next week. So we'll have two different information and a voting session for next week, if we want to ratify.
Very good, because I haven't reviewed yet this other PR, only Michael's.
Okay.
I had also not seen it, so yeah.
Yeah, it's quite fresh.
Yeah, it was 7 p.m. last night. I asked him to add it in. So, so first, top of the agenda, it's off up with you, Michael, on the policy.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add really, except for it'd be great to get some more reviews, and then at some point we can say, okay, this will do for a first draft, and then I think I can have some conversations about trying to get some amenable teams to start trying out the processes that are suggested, mostly the meetings and so on. Possibly the networking team, because we can lead on Marchin to be a good example. Yeah. So that's really all there. I might have more content for you in that I want to maybe also then port over some of the Cardano engineering handbook, but a lot of that is much more boring because it's not about exciting conflict resolution. It's about whether or not you should ever read me. So less controversial, I think. And then the thing I'm still slightly stuck on, and I haven't kind of figured out how to make progress on, is to just like get everyone to agree on what comms platform we should use, in particular for chat, which I think is the most might be the most pressing. But I'm still not really sure how to decide that.
I think we do some kind of off-chain vote thing, and I think if you're still good with it, to go over your policy on the town hall, we can actually make that as a
yes, that's true. Yes, so I could have I could touch up my questionnaire and send it out, link to it in the town hall, and then maybe we'll get some more input. That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone's aware. Town halls is next Tuesday. Michael's going to present.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So that's it really.
Okay. I think
I would like to do the comms thing, because that's also then that will be somewhat also be a bit of a political move, in that we would then maybe need to go to gently go to our development community project, say, look, we'll make you a Matrix channel, Discord channel, whatever we settle on. Please, can you start talking there? And that requires a certain level of will, because if they can just not. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the last two TBDs basically, right? Kind of marked as is in the draft.
Yeah, and in a sense, it's sort of an independent thing, except that it's necessary, because part of the point is to say you should be public about things, and that requires saying you've got to put them out somewhere.
What I really like and how it kind of turns out, I suggested some changes in how to phrase it. Maybe it's really this conformance way, right? So yeah, most of the things are really should, right? So make it as a default, right? If not, feel free to deviate, explain it. You must explain it. This is kind of the thing. But the musts, you must follow. If you want to change it, change the policy, right? Which is actually the intention. Change the policy to make it a should, or change where this chat is, and so on, right? And then we must have the discussion. I think this is a very nice balance we strike here, and being very permissive, but also having really open the way to change the policy or these policies.
Completely. I think too, for the policy, we should probably time box it after the town hall for last minute PRs and stuff, just so we can put it to the community to vote in, and then test it with Merchant.
Wait, so is that the plan? We're gonna ask the community to vote on it? Like, That's the thing, is we still have this somewhat lack of clarity of who are we supposed to get people to vote on stuff?
Well, I mean, the committee itself would vote.
Ah, I see. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said committee. I thought you said the community to vote on
Oh,
it.
no.
Oh
Committee.
God. Do we have to? We have to get the community to vote on it too. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we could do the following, right? So we have the more public appearance. We will get some more feedback, incorporate it, vote it, probably enact it, and then test it out, right, with actual projects. And then we'll see how kind of compatible
Yeah.
it is. And then we just go through an amendment, right? And this is actually the nice,
Yeah.
we test it. It's better to kind of put it out there, maybe be embarrassed about one or the other thing because it will not work or is not accepted. That's okay. But basically rather test out the way how this can evolve and really fit the
Yep.
needs of the
And
community.
maybe it needs a banner saying, this is a in progress, expect it to be partial, and we expect to revise this. I don't know. I think people can take things too seriously and be like, it's not. We want it to be serious, but it might take us a while to get there, and we might need to tweak it. So
Yeah.
immediately explode if it.
Well, and this is also going to be the guinea pig for Intersect, because I think we're the first committee to almost have a policy enacted.
Right, and this is going to be the first time, especially we're going to be making many requests, well, some number of requests, and a small number of demands on the people
Yeah.
doing development work. So,
Well, if anyone wants to discuss it in a back alley, I'll make time for them. So.
Well, and this is the thing. This is one of the reasons why also, it's a little bit of a political process, and so I'm like, well, I know most of these people, so I can kind of sell them on it. But it's it's a good trial run. If everybody just refuses to comply, well, then we know we have a problem.
Okay. Well,
then we have more things to change, right? I mean, that's just fine. We have lots of input to work on then, right?
Yeah.
In the end, that's it, right? I think really get something out and not just keep it in draft forever. I think it's okay to use decisive language.
Yeah.
If you put things in place to say, I mean, that's here to change and to accommodate, right?
So I guess my plan is, let's say that, broadly, this is the last round of feedback for the first version, and then we can have it be published on the little page, and then I can start doing some politics and trying to get some people to, well, so I guess Christian and I, because I suppose it's technically Christian's job to
I'll be your
I guess it's also a test run for, I think the OSPO is supposed to be both supporting and enforcing people doing this stuff. So this can be a test run for you doing that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe we should do it that way.
So we should be able to run. So my proposal, if we want to agree to it, is so on the 30th Tuesday, we'll do the announcement, and then we could close off edits Friday, the 16th of February. That gives a 2-week window. And then
I also agree with Sebastian. I don't think we need to be. There's been a long window, right? And because it's not like it's a final thing, we could just. I don't think we need to be like, now the final comment period has begun. I think we should say, okay, this is the.
I would say when we do get some input, still just gather it on the public town hall, put it there.
Oh right, yes, of course. Sorry, we have
the next time we are enough to vote on. We'll just do.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
I agree with that. Town hall next week. Get some feedback. I'll incorporate it before the next meeting, and then we can.
Yeah. So maybe we merge your PR and say it's not ratified yet. Give a status somewhere, right? Then then just not a PR for getting this feedback in, but it's already visible, right? So we kind of show how this would look like a bit. After merging, it's easier to show, right, in an unratified state, and then we just take the first round.
Well, so the other thing is that it's easier to solicit. It's actually kind of easier to get feedback on the pull request because people can comment directly on it. That's the only advantage to keeping it unmerged.
That's true, but I would like to kind of show it also as a result. I mean,
I'm going to try and push another commit and see if it will now render it properly, because I just went ahead and put it on, published it. So now you can in fact find. But also I fixed all your headings. I'm sorry, Christian.
Thank you.
Pretty bad job of formatting that.
Haven't done some time.
So I fixed that. So I'll see if I can make it. See if I can get a rendered preview. That would be really helpful. I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're in agreement on that. And Okay. Next item is the strategy. Sandip's not here, so what I was going to do was, so I'll have my crew to start working on drafting the open source strategy next week, and I wanted to kind of centralize on the topics. Didn't save it. Hold on 1 second. Just stop sharing real fast. I gotta find the source doc. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to know the key areas that the committee feels we need to focus on, because we did have a lot of feedback all together, and we can't do everything at once. We can add these in as we go along. But I kind of felt the first 3 are the things to work on: community engagement, collaboration, governance, and decision making, and then either technical development, DevX, or sustainability and funding models. Any thoughts towards that?
I actually don't agree that we should be focusing on community engagement and outreach as our first thing. I think that to me that seems like a growth thing. That's like a stuff is alive and working, and now we want to engage with more people and bring them in so that we can grow the community and have more people doing stuff. And I feel like at the moment I feel like we should be a bit more on the stage of let's make sure that everything doesn't fall over in the next year. And so from my perspective, that's stuff like governance and decision making. This is we don't fall over and have an explosion. You know, that's my inclination would be to that some of these look to me more like growth items, and some of these will look more like sustainability survival items, and I would focus on the latter.
Okay.
But ironically, basically, community involvement is already what we have a bit, right? So we kind of show things out. We gathered some feedback on communication channels. We will just put things out again, especially also on the communication channels. We even got someone who is not in this committee right now, right? And probably right now, because Adam is quite engaged always, also already contributed something on really participate in proposing maybe something. So I think while we don't focus on it, it's happening, right?
Not on Cardano, right? So this is I was interpreting this as like on our what are we trying to do with open source at Intersect, right? Sure, I think the committee functioning, right, for the committee's legitimacy and for it to be functioning, we do want to get the community in, because otherwise no one will stand for election, nothing will happen, it will be ineffective, right? That sure for that, but for our actual Intersect projects and them flourishing in open source, yes, in the long run you want the community to be involved and you want all that stuff, but at the moment they all have contributor bases, which for historical reasons, and I sort of feel like step 1 should be keeping that ship sailing, and you know, like if you scroll up, right, like look at this, where this is like you know, develop leadership roles in the community to guide project direction. Like, sure, that sounds great, but we have people with leadership roles who happen currently to be paid employees of IOG or IOI or whatever, and that's not where we want to be in the long term, but is totally fine in the short term. And so to me, this stuff just yes, this is what we want to do, but it's you know, further development away from the status quo.
Well, I do agree with you, Michael. It's just this is also something that can be a passive thing and are not as much of a major focus. Like governance and decision making, I think is going to be paramount to the community engagement piece, but it's still something that could be done in parallel. Because essentially for us to, like what you're saying, in the short term, it's not a big thing, but in the long term, this will become a big thing. So that's just where I think it should be included in the strategy, and we can just make it a minor point and maybe do more of a priority ranking of what we focus on first.
But then you're going to introduce, then you're going to include everything in the strategy.
Well, I mean, we can still minimize it.
But like, strategy, but I think a minimalist strategy is more effective because you focus. I don't think we should be spending a substantial amount of
the only
time.
counterpoint I would offer you, Michael, is that like there are certain omnipresent themes in terms of what priorities get focused on, and if what, I think to Christian's point, like just having open meetings is is what it means in terms of community, like just being consistent with the broader, the kind of high level themes. But to your point, from a impact and priority, there's very specific things that enable open source work itself that have to get done. Otherwise, what's the point? But just to establish that it is part of the mandate, it might be a 1% focus for the first 6 months as opposed to what have you. Have to get those critical items working. But what can we do to be consistent with the community value structure as we focus on that work, like have open meetings, might be good enough. It's not like we're having
that, right? We have a statement of our goals, right? And I'm not proposing that those goals, we might say, well, we're not actually going to be actively doing much towards some of those goals. I feel like the strategy should say, considering our goals and the situation we find ourselves in, here's what we're going to focus on. If it just says, here's a representation of our goals and some stuff that addresses them, and we're going to do these in a somewhat, as we feel like it, then I sort of don't feel like that's very useful, personally.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So I think the biggest thing that would help with this is then doing a priority ranking of where we feel these fall into. And we could easily do that on Discord. Post this.
A lot of bullets, actually. Right? It's a long list, right?
I'm just even thinking of doing it by category versus each bullet point.
And I think, let's get realistic. How much stuff can this committee and this OSPO do? We can probably do 2 bullet points max or something. Realistic, the next 6 months, before they do the next re-election cycle. It's ludicrous to have a list of 18 things. How many things have we done so far? 0.5? It's just. If it were me, I would say we should pick 1 or maybe 2 single bullet points that are our top priority.
I feel like, kind of capturing the current work, as you say, right, keep that ship which is already sailing, right, and don't sink it or by just artificially cutting down the sails, right? Just kind of put things into into shape, or kind of create these policies which are not overly restrictive, but kind of also capture the current ethos, right, in a way to have that also ready for maybe some projects which are not aligned that much right now, or and maybe the current situation is not perfect, so we can evolve, but we need to put it in place first, right? And by putting this in place without being too overly restrictive or force everyone to have weekly meetings, which they wouldn't have otherwise, and they were fine just also not having them so far, right? But doing this kind of policy making without doing too much, but also just do something at least, and then do this in a way which is visible and inclusive, right? So maybe in the open and with some of these values honored, and I think that is more than enough what we can do, right?
Yeah, my whole goal with this on the next steps is figure out what we're focusing on right now, and then create a backlog of everything else in a priority order. That's the main goal I want to take away, and then we can tailor the strategy to that point. That makes sense.
But I think also some changes, right? In 6 months, the picture may look.
Yeah, so, that's the beautiful thing of a backlog. You can always change
it. You spend months making it, and then you throw it away every year, having used almost none of it. Yes, that is the beauty of the backlog. I think we could pick 2 bullet points to focus on, and 2 bullet points that we think will be the next things we focus on, and then we got that. That could be. And then in 6 months, we'll probably say, actually, we changed our mind about those second 2 bullet points anyway. But at least we didn't spend 14 pages explaining all the stuff that we're not doing.
Okay. Well,
I'm being very negative here. I just think this is maybe a case where less is more.
No, I understand what you're saying, Michael. What I'll do then is create a new thing on the GitHub page, and then start doing it in a format that we get feedback between everybody and agree what our bullet points are.
Is this strategy something the OSPO will pick up, or we as a committee? Because as I mean, we discussed it in the very early meetings, and I missed a few now, but right, we're more in like in a consulting, guiding, and decision-making role here. Although Michael is doing a lot of work by himself, literally just doing writing, right? And I think this is also the work relationship, right? So there is some people at Intersect. So you, Christian, maybe you have someone to work with you on these actual things, which we then can pick up, discuss, get feedback on, and improve maybe.
Well, that's what so for the first draft of the open source strategy, I'm going to be responsible for writing that up. But as soon as it's drafted, it has to be ratified by the committee, and then the committee becomes the owner of it. And then we go through iteration cycles of that. And I'll be the enforcement arm of that strategy.
Yeah, but you mentioned a backlog, right? A backlog is pieces of work. Is it pieces of work for me, for Ryan, or like
it's
who's ever on the board right now or on this committee?
That's, I guess we can decide for that. So if the committee wants those items to be worked on, they'll coordinate with the OSPO, and I'll find the route for that.
I mean, realistically, also, we're never going to finish any of these items, right? Like, they don't get done. They're thieves.
Yeah,
it's more that we'll have done enough that we want to now prioritize something else. So
yeah, we can define the level of maturity for each of these for what we consider done. So, like community engagement right now, this is sufficient for the moment. So,
actually, I wouldn't hate that as a framing if we said, like, you know, this is our current, these are the things we care about. This is currently like how mature we think they are. Our strategy, our goal is to, like, you know, get to a basic level of maturity on blah and blah, which are relevant, important for continuity or something, and then we plan to focus on these things. I would be okay with that framing.
okay,
I'll
work on the format.
I know. I feel like Pat is probably the person who's written the most strategies here, so I feel like Pat should have some opinions.
Well, you know, I would generally agree with your first statement, which is spending time crafting strategy is not as valuable as getting actual learnings from the market. So like actually shipping things. So what's our capacity to ship? The second is that most strategies break down not because of the strategy itself, because you lack the structure to execute. And I feel like the decision here to do the technical working groups as a, like, what is our actual mechanism for working on things? And then let's give those teams what they need. So I think to your point, like, there's a lot of things that Christian is trying to do to support broader standing up of Intersect that bring a lot of other broader issues top of mind, right? But in terms of like keeping our focus here back to something we said, I think pre the Dubai event, which was like, we want to actually get we have critical things that if we don't get them done, like move the core repos over, then what's the point of talking about all the other stuff? Let's not optimize for the future that may not come. So I think to that end, like, we have an opportunity with this year to say, okay, did we put in the right structures? Are we actually using them as opposed to talking about other structures? So like the technical working groups seem to be working, then let's just continue to use that. And then the other elements, it's more of like, what is work that Christian is actually doing within his job at Intersect as opposed to things the committee needs to weigh in on for him, and just try to cut anything else off of that. So how do we define what not to do? So I don't want to, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and then I've just come off of like a week of 2024 kickoffs talking about nothing but strategy and alignment to resources. And so I don't want to like go down that rabbit hole, but generally, yes, like I try to say to my team, okay, well, what's the highest best use of Q1 and what are the most impactful things for January, so that like we're going to put a hard line in the sand and say we are executing February 1 on all things for the rest. We gave ourselves January for the whole year. Now we're moving, and we will revise and adapt as we actually finish those sprints of work, right? So maybe it's helpful then for this group to say we're not going to be in a never-ending, like, this is the time box we gave for doing the strategy piece or making those decisions. Those were made. We have the structure to execute on them. Now we're executing. Now it's, what are we doing? What is the sprint length that we're, you know, how much time do we need before we can say, do we need to change course? So I generally feel like you kind of we weren't that explicit about it, but we did get that work done at the end of last year. So the only other comment I have, which is more, is just like there are other committees adjacent to us that will have inputs on our committee, things we don't have to burn cycles on. There are other committees that have more of a focus on community engagement. They may be telling us things they're doing that we just use. We don't have to put our cognitive cycles into like figuring out things that they're already working on. We just have to coordinate. So back to you, Michael. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. I meant to.
Oh, oh, okay. All right.
I mean, but that's very valuable input, right? And what is the new situation right now, right? Like it's a month before we moved several repos now into this Intersect MVO, right? So there's this GitHub organization existing now, and all these repos which moved, they were not just in isolation before, right? There was some kind of policy employed at IUG. Michael knows it. I know it a bit. And especially also we were having this past work on this engineering handbook and so on there. And Christian was also, and others were advocating for this inner sourced good practices of doing things already good while being still in this very closely knit corporate setting. Now in the Intersect, right, these things are still there. We need to capture it. So I think putting down like a policy, if it's only about governance, that's it. And making that also visible enough that any new projects kind of, which first it must work for the projects which are now in Intersect, which by definition is the case. And I think there's maybe some more kind of lined up, and maybe even the Hydra, which I'm working on, is also up for a future batch, right? And maybe some I'm not a good testing grounds here because I would know that this exists, right? But maybe some work where somebody else has been worked on and this is now being adopted by Intersect, or it's kind of scheduled for be moved. Would they know even about that there is a guideline, right? Where do we need to put it, right? How to make it aware and how to advocate for this. And this is kind of maybe one of the next steps we should be looking at, how to, and if it's even in draft mode, right, we can't even start advertising for it. I mean, it's not there, it's irrelevant, right? It's just a draft. It's not even active. And I think kind of getting this, first foot in the door here, even if it's not a complete policy, it's only covering what a project is and how we escalate. That's it. That's good. I'd like to focus on this a bit. And then we can add more stuff to the breadth of it, right? Then Christian can go and take the whole engineering handbook and just put it into also this policy and pour it there. Then we can talk about how we changed, make it more open, this committee, and it's not just arbitrarily selected.
So this is basically focusing on like this would be basically focusing on like 2 bullet points from that list, which is like what, like transparent governance and maybe, I guess, like other, organization level policy. And that might be it. And maybe that's all we can do in the next 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It might be. And then I think there's no shame in saying that. And especially, I think a good thing is like we can think about like what is our comparative advantage as a committee. There are other people engaging with the community and doing community stuff. That's maybe not the thing that we are best placed. Whereas this sort of stuff is stuff that no one else is going to deal with unless we deal with it.
And as other committees form or don't form, right, this is input again into our potential work or not work, right? So
Okay.
I really like that statement you said, like, what are things that our committee can do that no other committees can do? And that's our priority, like, because let them do the easier things or the other things that complement this work. We don't need to take on everything. If I go to kind of like an extreme example, to your point about like, look, I've seen super mature developer portals, right, with events and hackathons and tons of documentation and Swagger, implementation stuff and multiple, like that's for there's a level of activity and scale that should be happening in order to make that worth doing. As opposed to what you guys are saying right now, let's not overbuild it, right? Let's not overbuild it. We don't have a business case to need all of that infrastructure, but if the repos and if there's a bootstrapping thing and that is carrying over the best practices from what these repos were already being managed under, why break things that were already working? Just get them under the right banner for now, right? They're a part of Intersect now, not IOJ, so good enough.
Agreed. Okay.
And within a half a year from now, I think the situation will radically change, right? We'll have, I guess, SIP 1694 will come into effect at some point. There's going to be voting on, right? Then the whole setup of the Intersect giving out funds for the future or kind of it becomes more and more concrete, right? And if this gets established the way it's imagined to be, then suddenly there is going to be more and more demand of saying, okay, I want to be
very
proposing
natural policies, right? Like
exactly.
focuses for us, right? Like then, suddenly we might go, oh, actually now though, clearly the most important thing is make it as easy as possible for whoever gets the new Intersect contract to implement XYZ to actually be able to contribute their work effectively. Or maybe it'll just be IOI, right? And then we're like, okay, well, we don't need to worry so much about that. So, the future will tell us something we want to do.
Yeah, well, and sustainability and funding mechanisms, I think, are not going to be an immediate focus right now, by any means. Governance and decision making, I'll find 2 or 3 bullet points and propose those.
So it might be valuable, but not for this meeting, to solution that what does done mean in the pre-SIP 1694 work? What does done mean? What did we say we're going to do? Get the core repos over, right? Get things actually set up to function for business continuity, right, within Intersect. Then, to your point, like Sebastian, like there is post 1694 world where there's all these other things that could kind of happen. What do we need to be doing to prep for that? That could be a set of decision points, but like let's make sure we know what done is on our first charter, and then we realign to that.
Yep. Okay. I'll take that. Regarding roadmap, we're outside of the strategy. We pretty much hit every other milestone. We did successfully migrate Cardominal and GovTool today. There's some back-end items before some of the repos go public, but another milestone checked off. So we're actually
are both following all the policies such that they can be moved into, like the existing policies. I mean, there is none effect right now, right?
You don't have any policies, right?
Exactly, but if it would be in effect now, right, before moving something there, right, kind of making it ready to kind of be funded.
I think this has to go in.
Right,
has to go in this incubation policy that Christian wants to do. And if you look at like the ones for other software foundations, that's basically what they say. They're like, look, step 1, follow our policies. Basically, show that you can do the dance, and then that's check, and then So
well, if you want to say
level of like check that your code isn't lies.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've already done somewhat of the incubation thing, similar to our open source prep that we did at IOG. I made GovTool do the same thing before we moved it. So,
so step 1 for the incubation policy could just be you write down those steps, right? I mean, that's like the dumbest possible incubation policy, but not the dumbest possible incubation policy.
Well, if you're not even meeting that standard, it's a red flag.
But it's somewhere to start from,
Yeah.
So I would be in favor of you just doing that as a step 1.
Yeah, I'm so I'll just switch in the update on that too. Then I got my takeaway for the strategy piece. For incubation policy in draft, nothing to present on that at the moment. So that's that. Next item on the agenda was workflow for the OSPO. I will have a roadmap and a plan to present next week. We have a kickoff with the staff Monday to go in detail on everything. And I'll get some expert opinions on their OSPO setup and restructure as need be. New business delivery assurance, Matt, we'll move that to next week. Michael, I had items for consideration listed for you. Can't remember what was intended with that nomenclature.
Sorry, what?
It was items for consideration. We had talked.
Did I just say I have some stuff I want to talk about? I probably said something like that.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it was.
I think I probably already talked about it.
Okay.
I would like to. By the way, has everyone on this committee received any kind of invitation to use the Gitbook or anything? I did ask for Lorenzo to add you all, but I don't know whether he's done anything. You can also, of course, submit pull requests to the repository on GitHub, but I would like everyone on this committee to have the ability and hopefully desire to just edit our committee space, because that's what it's for.
If not, I will make that my action going away from this.
Bit of admin trivia. I have something else I wanted to say. If I did, I've forgotten.
Okay. Well,
I just clicked through, right? We moved it over, right? And I actually have been involved in this project, right? But never asked for, hey, write down your contribution guidelines, right? Or how do you make a PR for this, right? So it is in the most earliest stage, maybe, as it goes in terms of like a proper open source project, right? It's just public code, maybe with some reading is already good, phase one, and maybe then just put things in place, right? Kind of say, okay, this is the how you can contribute and so on, and maybe how the team members, the goals and so on, right? Kind of setting up this project term, which we're kind of creating now. And yeah, I can see this will come naturally, right? By just looking at all of the repos and kind of people seeing themselves or not finding themselves in the policy as it is written.
yeah, that's a good point. That marks on my calendar an issue to raise too. I'm gonna repo for that. Okay. Well, last item on the agenda was GovTool. I got Ryan on here for that. I hand it over to you, dude.
Cool. Hi everyone. Yeah, Christian gave me the opportunity to introduce GovTool, and I think it's a really good. I think it could be a good project. We could act as a pilot for you guys to test out some policies and things like this. I'll just share my screen now. And yeah, I just wanted some of your feedback. So I'll give the intro. So GovTool. First, obviously, I hope people are familiar with SanchoNet. SanchoNet is a DevNet which is featuring the new 1694 governance design. And as part of this, the main way people are going to interact with governance, obviously, will be via GovTool. So GovTool is a DApp. I say DApp with quotations because there's no smart contracts involved. It's just a website with wallet functionality. So you can connect your wallet, and then also on the back end of GovTool, it reads from the chain. I don't like using the word DApp, but people have chosen the word DApp to mean this, so that's why I'm using it. It's very simple. We've moved the code over now into Intersect repository. It's a very simple DApp, very simple web app. So yeah, you just have a web app on the back end. We just run a DB sync and then a light API wrapper around that, and then the website just queries DB sync. You can query DB sync for things like governance actions. So part of the new thing you vote on chain, and we'll render those here in the web app for people to look at and use.
There's a lot of low confidence, apparently.
Sorry. Oh yeah.
Low confidence.
Yeah, there's a lot of SanchoNet. People.
Yeah. I'm just tackling.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I can share the link. This is our SanchoNet beta for GovTool. This is GovTool. Is, as I said, very simple. We've tried to do some open source stuff so far and tried to follow some best practices that we know and some stuff that we've read the engineering handbook, but because this is a React app, a lot of the handbook is very Haskell and Nix orientated, whereas we're not using any of that. But we've done stuff here, so you can see we've got a README. I should say as well, we're using this GovTool as a mono repo because at the moment it's just this one web app. But I think we're going to include a proposal discussion forum in here, which will be in the same repository. But we need to reorganize how it will look, but it'll all be under this GovTool banner. So we have OK READMEs at the moment. This is the base README, and then inside we have ones like the front end and the back end. Quite simple stuff. There's simple stuff. That's the baseline that I think we should have. We have stuff like code of conduct, which I just copied from IOG one. and I need to sub in an Intersect email for some of the enforcement stuff. We have a contributing guidelines, which I wrote most of it and then stole a lot of it from Hydra, I think, and also Plutus, and just cobbled the bits which made sense. So in here, working conventions, ways to contribute. I've added like issue templates and bug templates, all of that stuff's all in there. I think I stole that maybe from Catalyst. I really went and tried cherry picking what I thought looked best. So we've got quite a long contributing with links to some style guides that we have. These are just ones we found that we liked. Nothing in particular. We need to add a link to a Haskell one, because our backend API is API wrapper around DBSync is Haskell, because it was made sense at the time. So we need to add a style guide there. We have some other documentation here, but I need to extend this a bit. Like I've got nothing in here about how to do releases or how we'd like to do releases. So at the moment, it's very ad hoc and very random. So at the moment, we're developing this we have contracts with a vendor. So we have a vendor development team, and then on the Intersect side, there's a small team of us to own like the product direction, things like this. Our plan for open sourcing, so what we're thinking in the future, this is currently a private repository, but I think it makes very much sense to open it up as soon as possible. But we have a small IP legal IOG Intersect issue before we can open up, but we're working on that, and thank you, Christian, for helping. We also are using GitHub project management. We've just changed to this in the new year. I think it makes sense to keep using it. We're unsure if we're going to open up the project management publicly yet. And maybe you guys have some insights on that. I think letting people, anybody, once it's open, letting anybody raise issues will be really nice and will really help us. We got bug report, feature ideas, security, the standard stuff.
Did you say you're using GitHub projects, or are you?
Sorry,
did you say you're using GitHub projects?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, nice.
We've just moved to it, but we're not really using it yet. None of us have used it before, so And this month, due to the way the contract worked out, we have very little developer time this month. So very little's been done, and very little. We haven't done much with the projects yet. So maybe we're doing things wrong. We don't really know yet. I think the plan and what we need to do, we want to in the future move the product backlog and like the decision making on features. We want to move that to community somehow. That is the goal, to leave the ownership. Our current plan for DevOps and SRE is we'll probably under contract like a DevOps and SRE through Intersect, and they can provision resources and make sure all the CI pipelines and make sure things are working for not only GovTool but also these other tools which will live in this repository. The proposal discussion forum, DREP campaign platform. There's a few other governance tools that are being made, and we're thinking this one support organization, we'll call them, so handles like DevOps and SRE will be able to support all of these governance tools at once. That's our current thinking. Is there anything which is clearly missing? Yeah, please go ahead.
No, not missing, but basically, you've done the most. I think everything which is kind of the good best practices, right? Of kind of having public code here, right? Having things in place, be kind of approachable to contributors, right? The things we actually haven't written down right now yet, but which are of course right in the engineering handbook or other practices done, and the cherry picking is definitely nice. But now is an interesting bit actually. What you touched on is like the GitHub project is just a tool, right? But in the end, what you have said, right, kind of wanting to make this decision making on what is built next or what is important for this tool, for this project, really done in a suitable and a community inclusive way, right? Is really this open governance model. We don't probably have much of an opinion there really, other than you must have a committee, right? And you must have like kind of an open platform, a channel to kind of take part of it, where things are getting discussed, and provide the transparency as needed, right? Having some public project which kind of shows you at some very high level, saying, okay, these are the things. People can request new things which get discussed, right, by the contributors, or people just can contribute or discuss their own contribution they want to take forward, and so on. Become a committer, become the role to be, right, and be involved in the governance to create and get merit. I think this is really the super interesting area of like this open governance of an open source project.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we've talked about running a working group, what that looks like, and that working group will own the I think backlog's a bad word, but own the product direction as such. And then people can come request changes, and then through the working group, the decision can go up to a committee who can make a budget decision and allocate to another vendor to implement something, or someone from the community to implement something. I think makes a lot of sense.
I also wonder whether maybe in the small case, so there's this slightly awkward thing where we're kind of recommending that you should have a committee of like the people who are actually working on the project, who just you meet and that's public, but you're probably mostly chatting about, is my PR done yet? And then there's a working group where people are talking about, well, what should we be doing? And maybe the lightweight version of this is to just say, to start with, maybe these two groups should be the same, or you could just have one meeting that handles both business for both, and maybe that's maybe you want to start like that. But I think the idea is that we want people to be able to see both how the sausage gets made, both in terms of deciding what to do, but also in terms of the day-to-day. Please will someone review my pull request, or I tried to do this, my pull request is broken because I can't figure out how to fix that flaky test, can someone please help, thing.
Okay.
It's multi-level, definitely, right? So it's really depends a bit always on the scope and the size of the project, right? But what worked very well, for example, for Hydro, is we have monthly a show and tell, basically, and we have people from the community also showing what they use our stuff for. But if nobody shows up, it's at least, hey, this is on a very high level what happened over the last month. Maybe show what we implemented, and also kind of outline a bit what the next steps would be, right? And kind of get a bit feedback, ideally, or whoever is interested, right? They would get the information there. And I think having something like this forum where you can get information if you are actually interested, right, is the quality gate. I think a very high level already quality gate, which we could meet, right, on some of these projects. Really.
That kind of makes more sense when you're an integrated team, right? I think if you think of that for like a normal open source project, then I don't know, they're usually not organized enough to have a weekly show and tell, because people are doing things who knows when. But maybe, I don't know, maybe
it depends really, right? And if it is a slower moving project, then you just don't have that maybe in that forum, right? But it's more like then you have a show and tell forum where you basically show your work also and I'm not sure, right?
Yeah, like the Ledger CLI and API may not have a show and tell hardly ever.
But maybe it's something we could just say, we encourage people in your regular meetings where you do your project management business, we encourage you to have demos, and just to each other. But also that also makes it more attractive for other people to attend, because then even if you don't care about the other details, there's something interesting, which is people showing some demos. So maybe, but that's almost more of a cultural thing than.
Of course it is. Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't dictate it, right? What we say is, I think that it must be public and accessible, right?
So one thing maybe it would be nice to write would be something like an agenda template for one of these meetings. So we could say, here's an idea of how you might run one of these meetings.
Demo first.
5 minutes, introduce new people. 5 to 10 minutes, demos. Or something, and then have like a little sketch of an agenda.
Do something like the Catalyst intro. Someone gets to read the statement each time.
I'm not familiar with it.
It's one of my favorite things Daniel does.
Yeah, well, the welcome to the experiment. Yeah. Okay. What I think for that is, I think you make a good point. Like the day-to-day, can someone review my PR stuff? Like, to me, that makes sense to separate that from the bigger, maybe monthly. This is what we're going to work on for the next month. What features would people like to see? What bugs are really annoying people. But then the day-to-day could still be open. People could still join. But I think in general, less people are interested in that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the
You give
thing
me
that
something to
you were
think
saying
about.
is that the day-to-day thing should be open, right? Like you have.
Yeah,
you should-
yeah, definitely.
I guess the thing I'm trying to grasp toward is also we don't want us to say you have to have so many meetings. You have your project management meetings, then you have the working group meetings, and then you have to attend the Intersect Special Council on people with cats. Like, this is we don't want to make people feel like we're imposing lots of bureaucracy. So I wonder whether in some cases we might want to say try and merge these things a bit and say, look, if you're a small project and don't have a separate working group meeting, just try and incorporate that into your.
You could make these meetings on demand, right? As long as you just say, hey, there's somebody interesting and interested, and as long as you're open to have these, right? It's fine.
I mean, certainly. So, for example, in the very early days of Plutus, we just had a single weekly meeting that was kind of combined, sort of, project management stuff and like direction and that sort of thing, and it was fine. It was a bit of a mess, but for a small project, you are a bit of a mess.
Well, and I think it works too as to what the audience base is. Are you primarily contributors joining the call, or is it just people with interest?
Right, and certainly also for small projects, the contributors tend to have a very high overlap with the people who have kind of opinions about the design. So
yeah, which GovTool might spark a good interest of both, maybe. We'll see.
It's really, there's some end user direction here, definitely, right? So this actual people sitting in front of PCs using it as a user interface. So this is very consumer even focused, right?
Yeah,
so we can have a little link on the web page being like, join the GovTool meeting.
Yeah,
we should.
Maybe
We should. No, I like that. Because at the moment we have user snap integrated. If you go to the front end, in the bottom right corner, if you're not using Brave, there'll be a small pop up where you can give feedback, and that does like a thing via user snap. And we've linked to our Trello, but we need to integrate that into GitHub. Sorry. But we've had a lot of feedback, and a lot of people are giving us pointers, because also this is a beta. Like this isn't like a lot of the other Cardano code bases. Like this is new. This is really in development. This is a beta. People have opinions. There's lots of things which don't work well, and lots of things that work okay.
But also on different levels, right? I would go to a Cardano node demo every month. I would want to see what the new version does different, right? I want to have I would like to have me demonstrated what is now different with the new node version, or the new Cardano CLI or API or whatever, right? I mean, also in these infrastructure dependencies, right? That would be cool.
And I'd probably sit in on the working group if it was, public. I'd probably just put it on the background just to be like, oh, I'm kind of interested to know what people are thinking about doing next. So promoting thing is very good.
I have a question here. We have talked also about open source policies regarding quality, security, and bugs. How does this work if we open this repository for the public to work on?
So this is like a massive topic. So this is actually right. This is the thing that after we maybe get the first version of this governance on, I would like to start a conversation about security and maybe form a working group to talk about security, because it in particular kind of messes with lots of our assumptions. Like you can't discuss this stuff in the open. You have to have annoying private lists of insiders to deal with stuff. Do you have to hide your fixes? It is really messy, but I think that's also quite important for us to sort out. So I don't really have anything specific to say there, except that yes, I think we should try and tackle that soon. Also.
Can you maybe give Ronald just a link to the engineering handbook on the security section? Because we had some discussions already when kind of trying to kind of put it to paper in IOG. Remember, there has been discussions.
Yeah, there's something, right? But it's quite.
And it might not always apply to all projects, right?
Right. That's the other thing. It is, but definitely different, right? So Cardano, it's different because you
But the question is also here, who is checking that? Who's making sure that the code is correct and that it doesn't contain, let's say, security issues, etc.? Is that the working group, or is that somebody who is assigned with this task?
Project. It's the contributors to the project. If they produce bad code, then they produce bad code. Unless Intersect is going to hire or maintain.
It's a piece on Intersect to figure out too. potentially some IOI plugins, but it also depends on the project because the IOI won't cover everything too. So yeah, let me take that back internal to how we want to address that. If y'all are familiar with Lawrence Clark, he's our Nigel's secretary, for lack of a better word. But he's done a bunch of the ICT coordination.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there is for low risk, there is also bug bounty stuff, right? And there is kind of you could not only a really high security software, right? It's the development of the software is one proposal, but also peer reviewed as you might peer reviewed auditing from like must be a different party even, right? Could also just be like funded open work, right? Like eventually open maybe, but it is always kind of to force it on all projects is super going to be super expensive, right? That's what I want to say. And not everything needs it. Yeah, the bug bounty tool, Ryan, that's very cool.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah,
at
I'll if I can. I think it'd be awesome.
And we have the certification, right? Yeah, self-certification and so on, right? Good point also, Alex. So there's several leads. Lots of concern.
Okay, we'll mark that as the next focus. I think the prereq being that getting the governance policy enacted, we'll get that taken care of next week, and then we'll move straight into security. And we'll keep you as a stakeholder within that, Ronald, because I think you'll be a good peer review to it.
But on to Pat's point, right? Ensuring security of the technology is maybe not our board problem. It's more like the technical steering committee's problem, right? Put in some more brains from there, maybe in this direction could also work.
That's
right?
what I
But
was
it's
gonna
an
do.
important point overall, though, right?
Yeah, I can't help my project manager roots. Thanks for joining, Peter. So I want to do my prioritized thing, but then I'm also going to overlap with the different committees that each one goes to. And I think that'll highlight who our stakeholders are to work with towards it. Because it has some overlap with us, but it's primarily a TSC thing, I would think.
Probably.
And they're the ones
Okay.
to sign the contracts. Okay.
That's not very always too much ourselves. Let's see. Have a good evening or day. I need to sign off as well. Let's close, right?
Thank you. I'll send out meeting minutes soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Ronald.